Joining me now, James Ashby, Chief of Staff for One Nation, and Christy McSweeney from PR Council. Welcome to you both. Christy, let me start with you. Were you aware the public service in Victoria, 54,000 of them, were going to be handed a $5,600 cheque, each of them, paid for by you and I?
Steve, I absolutely was not aware of that, so thank you for bringing it to light. And as someone who lives in Melbourne and has lived in Sydney as well for well over a decade, I will take your points and I'll raise you another one. Let's just compare Docklands to Barangaroo. Let's have a look at what Sydney's been able to do with what was traditionally and previously a rail yard, compared to what Melbourne's been able to do to populate Docklands. And of course, your points about the public service as well. The hard left Victorian government here is absolutely beholden to public sector unions in a way that the New South Wales government, successive governments, are not. And I commend Chris Minns. It's not very hard to vote for him at the moment, is it? For getting the public servants back to work. And another point I want to raise, he might be seeing what's coming down the line with governments being directed not to utilise consultancies of the big four so much. He wants to build a public service capability. He wants the public servants to do what they're supposed to curb the spending that state governments have, outsourcing what their public servants should do to big four consultancies who are ripping off the taxpayer to the nth degree.
James, welcome to the Man Cave on this Sunday night. When you think this through, I mean, the previous Labor opposition in Canberra used to scream about what Scott Morrison and the former Morrison government were doing in terms of pork barrelling. They talked about car parks that were funded to be built in railway stations that never got built, or if they were built, they were in electrics that they wanted to win. But the Victorian Labor government is doing this on a bigger scale than I think we've ever seen in Australia. That ridiculous suburban rail loop is across a bunch of southeastern suburban Melbourne suburbs that they want to either retain as Labor voters or get people to vote for them in those seats. And they're giving out cash to the public service. I mean, if you're in the public service and the government's sending you, $5,600 in $100 notes in an envelope in your bank account, you're hardly going to vote them out, are you?
No, exactly right. I find that extraordinary, $5,000, bonus at this time of the year when everybody else is doing it tough. I know a whole lot of people sleeping along the Rocky Riverbank tonight that would love a $5,000 injection here in Queensland, that's for sure. But, this is a state that, in effect, if they were a business, they would be trading insolvent. That's how in debt they are. And there is no recovery rate at the moment. I think a lot of people out there in business would love just this never-ending blank chequebook that the Victorian government seem to have. But these rail projects right across the country, not just in Victoria, but take, for example, the Inland Rail, are causing significant headaches for governments. Federal government can't get their act together on this one either. Mind you, when you compare the two projects, Inland Rail is a 1,600-kilometre rail track that's been built at a cost of $30 billion. It's still years off. They're only about a fifth of the way through. But again, it's creating problems. This is the rail link from Melbourne to Brisbane. And rail is definitely a great way to get people around. It's a great way to get more cargo around the country as well. But these cost blowouts just seem to be astounding. And Victoria, you take the cake. You win the prize for the biggest blowouts. It's just extraordinary. No wonder. I was at the Emu Park markets today, Steve. I ran into more Victorians here today than I've ever run into before. They're migrating north. You can keep your lefties down there with you. We'll take all the Conservatives here in Queensland. That's all I'll say.